Okay, I'll make it 5 o'clock if we can make a start. First of all, can I thank everybody for coming along to tonight's meeting of the Planning Application Committee, and a special welcome to our younger visitors as well. Hope you enjoy it. Not sure about that, but item number one is the evacuation procedure. We haven't got any, we haven't been informed of any practices for the fire evacuation, so if the alarms go off we'll treat it for real. There's nobody in the public gallery, so if we can vacate the council chamber, pass through these doors in the chamber, down the steps out the front door and meet across by the Yorkshire Bank. Please don't use the lift, and if anybody needs any assistance in getting down the stairs, let us know, we'll make sure that happens. It's also a good time to remind people to put their phones off or on silent. And what am I forgetting now? Oh yeah, I must say inform people that the meeting is being recorded and it's put out via the council's website within a day or two. So if anybody else wants to watch it, they can. Item number 2 is to receive apologies. We've had them from Councillor Tony Lloyd and Pomfret. Item 3 I've dealt with, we've already done that, confirmed the minutes 12th of December. And item 4 is to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary and other interests in accordance with the members' code of conduct and not already printed on the agenda. Okay, thank you. Item number 5 are declarations of contact. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I've spoken to residents with regard to item 3.
Okay, thank you. Which then takes us on to item 6. Applications for planning on which the public have indicated a desire to speak. I think it's all of them, isn't it? If I just run through that process with you, you may already have been informed, but what will happen is the planning officer will present the report. Following on from that, I take the speakers as listed that I've got, and if I can just inform members, we've got an extra speaker on item number 2, which is Councillor Tromans. The Constitution allows you to speak for 3 minutes. Once that 3 minutes is up and the egg timer goes off, I will stop you from speaking so that it's fair to everybody. However, members may wish to seek any points of clarification, but only from what you've said during your 3 minutes. Following on from that, the officer may want to come back on anything, and then it will move to the committee part of it. Something will need to be moved and seconded, and that will enable debate to take place. And that's what the committee will do, is consider the application and hopefully make a decision today. Most times we do. Sometimes items are deferred for further information or site visits, etc. But mostly we do them on the day. I think that's about it, isn't it? I've not missed anything. Okay then, so that takes us then on to item number 1, which is the land off Church Lane and Weddington Road.
Yeah, I want to say something.
Oh, go on. Sorry. What have I done wrong?
Throughout today there's been a great deal of discussion between the legal representatives of the George Eliot Hospital and officers of this council and from the developers' side over the degree of interpretation of the Section 106 regulations, SIL regulations, and the contribution that the George Eliot Hospital are requesting from the developers. It's not been possible for a conclusion to the legal aspects of that contribution request on behalf of the George Eliot Hospital to be formulated, and it's now considered that some of the queries raised today would be better considered by officers with further legal advice. As we've not been able to arrange this afternoon before this meeting, we are now requesting the committee defer the application in order that we can get that further legal advice to enable you to consider it fully at a further meeting.
Does it have any implication on our target times?
At the moment, the developer has given us an extension of time to deal with the application.
What's the wishes of members? Do you wish to defer it because of those reasons, or do you want to go ahead and consider it? Councillor Longdon.
Thank you, Chair. I think we should default to us, and considering the way that it's progressed to date without planning permission gives me some concerns, and I want to be able to speak about that as well. I could do it now, but I'm not going to because I've just moved the deferment. So I would hope that we're going to get a seconder for that and get it deferred, to get it done properly at the end of the day.
Okay, but the deferment
Correct.
about the agreement, the 106s and that for the hospital. Councillor Wilson.
Were to defer, there will be any implications for the residents who are currently in properties which do not have planning permission?
The residents are well aware of the situation, both from ourselves and from the developer. As far as I'm aware, none of them have raised any concerns as yet.
But they are expecting us to deal with it today?
Nobody has asked us particularly when the application's being considered.
Okay.
Okay. That we defer it so that...
Formally seconded.
Oh, right, okay. Putting my name down. I did today. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we defer the application to enable further negotiations to take place in regards of 106 and etc. Yeah. Okay, all those in favour of that? And against? Okay, so that first item is deferred then until we can get that extra information back, and it'll also give members time to look at other things as well. Okay, which takes us then onto item number 2, the land of corner of Eastborough Way and the Longshoot.
Thank you. This application is for variations to 2 planning conditions of an already approved planning permission for development at corner of Eastborough Way and the Longshoot. The 2 conditions in question are Condition 4, which relates to the plan schedule, and Condition 15, relating to tree and hedgerow retention details. As members will see from the agenda, there has been 1 letter of objection to the proposal on the grounds that the trees are already gone, there is the loss of habitat, an impact on visual amenity, and that one of the trees could have been retained. Conversely, there is also a letter of support for the application that trees that have been planted elsewhere on the site. The application is being reported to committee at the request of Councillor Tromans. Your officers consider that the key issues with this application are the quality of the trees, the impact on visual amenity, and the impact on ecology. In relation to the quality of the trees, the 2 trees in question are noted as T13 and T14. They are in this location here. So if I go back to the previous plan, that's the roundabout with the Longshoot and Eastborough Way, and they are in that location there. So blown up, it's there, there's the roundabout. These trees, as I've previously mentioned, have already been removed. However, evidence has been provided by the applicant that T14 was removed due to the presence of decay and fungus. And they also confirm that to ensure the safe removal of that tree, T14, they had to remove T13 as well. The Council's Parks team have been consulted on this application, and they have no objections to the loss of both of these trees. In relation to visual amenity, the trees are on the edge of the application site, and has, as such, had the potential to be quite visible from areas surrounding the site, but not overly visible from the surrounding highway network or public realm. However, the trees were located closest to the built form of the existing houses on the Longshoot, which are here to the north of this plan. As such, it's not considered that the loss of these trees will have a significant impact on the visual amenity. In relation to the impact on ecology, it is considered that the loss of these 2 trees does not result in a significant ecological asset. Parks and Countryside do not object to the loss on ecological grounds. It's therefore considered that there are no grounds to refuse the application. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions as set out on your agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tromans.
Except that when large developments are given approval, that sometimes there's trees and hedges that need to be removed or moved or whatever, and that, you know, we shouldn't treat these things as sacrosanct. And in fact, the developer's already gone ahead and removed these. My concern is, as ward councillor, is that with these developments, it seems to be that there's salami tactics. When we first saw the plans for this development, a lot of the hedgerow and trees were going to be retained. Then a bit more of it, the next iteration of the plans, more of it had gone and more. And then when they started the work, I remember having conversations with officers about how much had been grubbed up and how many trees were being cut down. And indeed, Parks did intervene and stop some of the others from being removed. Not those 2, it was other trees we were talking about. So, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, the planning permission shouldn't be granted. I'm not saying that, you know, we should not allow developers to remove trees where necessary. But clearly, where people have trees removed, there's an expectation that they will replace them with something that will, in time, provide as much amenity. We don't want to be losing trees net. We want to keep the numbers similar. We don't want to just, you know, say to the developer, yes, you've cut them down and you can get retrospective planning permission and you haven't even got to replace them. I think at the very least we should be changing or maybe inserting into condition 17 at the start of the second paragraph, deleting the words up to the word which, and saying replace these trees with something to be agreed by the Parks Department at the Nuneaton Borough Council, and then the rest of the paragraph talks about maintaining them for at least 5 years if they die. I think that would be the sensible thing to do. I would just like to bring to the committee's attention one final thing. The person that responded that said a tree's already been replaced on Camborne Drive, that's nothing to do with that development. The trees on Camborne Drive are part of the County Councillor's tree planting programme in another estate opposite side of the road. So it's nowhere near the view that we're talking about there. So I would ask the committee to make an amendment, if they allow the permission, but have some replacement trees put in and for them to be protected for at least 5 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No. William Hodgson.
Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to the Chair for the opportunity to speak in relation to this application. My name is Will Hodgson and I'm a planner at David Wilson Homes. The application...
Sorry, can I just put your microphone on, please?
Yes. Approval for the removal of 2 trees identified by an arboricultural consultant in an arboricultural condition survey carried out on Monday the 9th of October. The survey comprised a visual ground inspection of 2 trees, a mature field maple, given reference T13, and over-mature ash tree, given reference T14. Both trees are situated to the east of the site, adjacent to a private road leading to a residential cottage to the south. T14 comprises a single-stemmed specimen with large proportions, attaining up to 11 metres in height and 8 metres in crown spread. Tree T14 is positioned within close proximity of an access road and also has a high-voltage cable within the crown. This has resulted in significant pruning in the past to remove branches away from the cables. Extensive decay to the main stem had therefore developed, and this decay fungus results in a parasitic intense white rot which can lead to a brittle fracture of stem material and risk of failure. The potential risk of failure to the main stem would result in a significant damage and also poses a safety risk to private residents using the access road. As a result of this, the arboriculturalists recommended the immediate removal of these trees. In order to facilitate the safe removal of T14, it was recommended that T13 was also removed. David Wilson Homes are committed to achieving the highest industry health and safety standards, and due to the identified risk, we appointed a suitable contractor to remove the trees at the earliest opportunity. Coming on to Councillor Truman's point, subsequent to this application, David Wilson Homes are to submit a reserve matters application in regard to landscaping in order to mitigate the loss of the 2 trees. The reserve matters application will propose to sympathetically plant replacement trees in the same location. This course of action follows that recommended and supported by the planning officer and will be subject to approval by the Borough Council. We therefore respectfully request that members give favourable consideration to this application in accordance with the recommendation of its officers. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you. No? Anything to come back on at the moment? No? In that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation which is to grant planning permission subject to the legal agreement and the conditions printed? Is that seconded? Thank you. Any member? No? Councillor Longdon.
Well, I've got to say it, haven't I? I'm just getting a bit fed up now, getting a bit concerned with developers acting like the old-fashioned warlords and doing exactly what they want, when they want, and then coming up with reasons afterwards. They might be legitimate reasons. I have no way of knowing, and I don't care. They do not have the right to just go ahead willy-nilly and do exactly what they want, build houses without permission, take down trees without permission, when they should have looked at that in the first place. It should have been done on the first examinations, and it should have been part and parcel of the actual application. So I'm just angry that what's going on. I'm inclined to put my hand up against this, knowing full well it's going to have to go ahead anyway, but it's just a matter of principle now, and the developers have to learn that it's not the Middle Ages and it's not the 1800s. They just do what they like when they like. There are laws these days that help protect the environment and the people and the residents' living conditions.
Similar issues, but I've got a particular question. If we're going to plant replacement trees and maintain them for 5 years, how do we ensure that that 5-year maintenance is carried out, is completed? And I'm very puzzled as to why you have to take a healthy tree down because there's a rotten tree next to it. And I'll give an example, as I normally do. Local to here, the St Nicholas Church graveyard, they had a couple of diseased ash trees about 2 years ago, and there's lots of other trees surrounding these ash trees that weren't felled. The diseased ones were, 2 of them, and it was quite impressive to watch how they did it, because it didn't look too complicated, it didn't look too difficult, but I should imagine it was a little bit more expensive to safely take a tree down section by section rather than just fell it. So I agree with Barry on this one. It's wrong just to take trees down, and we talk about only 2 trees, but it's 2 more trees. We've felled hundreds and hundreds of trees in the last few years, and I haven't seen an awful lot of signs of replacement trees growing healthily to replace them. We all know that replacement saplings get vandalised an awful lot. It's very difficult to maintain their health for 5 years, let alone the 15, 25, 45 years it might take for a tree to achieve the maturity of the maple tree, the feed maple we're talking about here. So I'm very disappointed that this application has come up as a retrospective application. I think there should be some sort of enforcement or punishment because it's happened. Not that we give them... I don't know what we're going to do if we don't give them permission to take the trees down that are already gone. Perhaps one of the officers could answer that question for me. If we turn down this planning application tonight, what happens? Because the trees have already gone. Thank you.
Because the trees have already gone, they weren't protected trees in terms of a tree preservation order. So in terms of punishment, there's nothing that we could do that would levy a fine, really, against the developer. The only course of action that we would have is to serve a breach of condition notice against the developer, and within that breach of condition notice, we would have to give them what we felt were appropriate measures to remedy the breach of the condition. And as you've all said, it would probably be the replanting of trees. So you have the option as members to either put a planning condition on this particular application to ensure that these 2 trees are effectively replaced with species that we agree, and that would then ensure that it takes place as a result of this planning permission, or you could wait until the developer decides to put in a landscaping application at some point in the future and deal with it under that landscaping thing. But if you put a condition on now, you're ensuring that those trees are planted now.
Okay, thank you. Two things in, because there was something else on that. That was about the monitoring of the 5-year condition to make sure the trees are healthy at the end of the 5 years. I guess that's down to members of the public as well as anybody that's passing that way to keep an eye on it. But I apologise if it's in here and I haven't seen it. But sometimes, as well as the thing about getting the right sort of tree in there, we specify the size of the sapling to go in, because, yeah, if you put a whip in or a very small one, it's got less chance of survival. So will that be part of the officer thing, that it would have a decent girth on the replacement?
Yeah, if members choose that it must be bigger than a whip, then we can certainly get some information from our Parks and Amenities team as to what standard tree should go in, and put those details in the condition. So that's what would have to be replaced.
Okay, thank you. Did I see so? Yeah, Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Longden is absolutely right in terms of how it feels as both councillors and people sitting on the planning committee, that you can do what you want without being able to have any particular sanction against you. But as much as the thought of trying to make an example out of this case appeals to me, the thought of actually costing the council even more money in terms of the bureaucracy it would be to refuse the planning application, wait for them to do all the other things that Claire has just said, when as councillors we all have bigger issues that we want officers to look at in our own patches, I think is wasting council taxpayers' money. And we've got an application before us now. Let's just get it over with and dealt with. Whatever our feelings are about what's led us up to here, let's not create more work for ourselves and the officers and detract from what officers should really be doing, which is delivering services for the residents of this borough. I don't like it, but I'm going to have to vote for it because it's happened. But I am reassured that either way, we are going to get replacement trees. The representative, Mr Hodgson, has given that undertaking, and it would happen anyway through what Claire has outlined. So I think it's a case of sticking a peg on your nose and voting with it, because we've got no option really, unless you want to create more work and more cost for the council.
Say, but out of the 2 options that Claire gave us, the former was definitely the most attractive of the 2. That it is good that the developers, although they haven't in the past, are willing to plant something as a result of this anyway.
Okay, thank you. We'll get that. I think regardless of how the vote goes, I think we need to find a method of expressing the concerns that this committee has about such things to developers when they're seeking permissions, whether that goes via the portfolio holder or planning policy, I don't know, but I think we need to say that. We've had a number of occasions now of similar things. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to grant planning permission subject to the legal agreement and the... Do
you want to amend the condition?
To that tree thing, yeah.
Yeah. For replanting, do you need to vote on that?
Yeah,
Suitable size.
Are members happy when I spoke about the substantial size of a replacement, yeah? Okay, yeah. Sure you'll be able to word that. Right, taking that on board, And the recommendation to grant planning permission subject to those conditions and legal agreement. All those in favour? And against? And abstentions? Okay, so that's approved. That takes us on to item number 3 then. Amelia Close, Bulkington.
This planning application is for the erection of a detached double garage to the front of number 1 Amelia Close in Bulkington. The application site, as shown in red on the plan in front of you, is set on the other side of the cul-de-sac to the application site and is detached from the house. As members will see from the agenda and addendum, there have been both letters of objection and support for the proposal. However, issues such as how much land the applicant will own and how the remaining land will be maintained are not matters that we can take into account. There has been a previous application on this site for similar development, but due to Highways objections, this was withdrawn from consideration January last year. Your officers consider that the key issues with this application are highway safety and visual amenity. The impact on residential amenity is covered in detail on your agenda, and I don't propose to go over that again. In relation to highway safety, as mentioned previously, the reason that the last application was withdrawn was due to a highway safety objection. With this current application, further information in the form of vehicle tracking plans have been submitted, and these show that vehicles can safely access the garage. County Highways have confirmed that they do not have any objections to the proposal, and therefore there are no grounds to support refusal on highway safety. In relation to visual amenity, the land is detached from the house and is currently used as a landscaped area for amenity for the whole close. Officers consider that the openness of the application site, along with the presence of the private drives giving access to the properties, helps to give a sense of space to the close, which would otherwise be quite an intensive development. The loss of this area of land is considered to be detrimental to the visual amenities of the area to a level that warrants a recommendation of refusal. The recommendation is therefore one of refusal for the reasons as set out on your agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Mr. Jones. It's the big button.
The Cartwright development of 8 Amelia Close comprising of 8 properties. This grass area was intended as a visual asset to all the properties in the close, and it is an asset. When you drive in, it's a pleasing sight. Not long after Cartwright finished the development, he planted a tree. Subsequently, that tree passed away, and the remaining residents purchased 3 replacement trees, one of them being a maple. That maple now has been in for a number of years, and it's grown to a considerable height. On removal of that tree as proposed, the root extension is as high as the tree. That tree would not survive. Also, I live at number 8. If I draw your attention to number page 37, as you can clearly see on the plan, my property is number 8, adjacent to the proposed plan, and it would be an outrageous decision to allow this garage extension to be formally approved from visual aspect to my property. It would cause loss of light, and also the visual aspects of it. Losing that grass verge would be unthinkable as a resident. And as I've been in that property from new, that is what I bought into when I first moved into that property, that open plan of the development. And I'm sure if Cartwright would have intended to build on that, he would have built on it from new. And so far he decided not to, therefore making the development more pleasing to its residents. And as I say, that's what we all bought into at that time. So I formally object on visual amenity. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? Andrew Taylor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I speak as agent for my client and support the application. I was disappointed to read some of the comments within the report. As has been stated, this is a resubmission of a previous application, which at the time of the withdrawal, we were unable to satisfy the Highway Authority. The original concerns were not related to any vision lines, but purely the on-site manoeuvring of vehicles. During that time, we had considerable discussions with the planning officers, and we amended the roof and elevational designs to reflect comments made to us. This included considerable reduction in height to the roof and amending the gable design to a fully hit layout, which is presented before you this evening. Our client employed a highways consulting team to design and overcome the concerns raised by the county, and we genuinely believe that with this, and having amended the garage design and slightly resiting the building, that we now had a design which would meet both highways and planning acceptance. As has been commented, highways now have removed their objection. They have not objected on this occasion. We now have an impact and visual amenity, which was not mentioned during our original application when the specific amendments to the design were carried out. This is a very small and compact cul-de-sac with substantial properties, including several particularly large and extended properties. The dominant garage immediately across the road from my client's site has an upper storey development which faces down Amelia Close and can be viewed directly when entering the close from Nuneaton Road. Our proposal is nowhere near as imposing. We observe that other residents within the cul-de-sac have fully block paved their entire front garden, removing any grassed areas. This seems so strange when this application then causes a loss of grassed area and visual amenity. Once in my client's ownership, he will be able to take over full responsibility of maintaining this land, which he has done for many years, in part simply to keep the area tidy. Since 2003, I'm advised. Happy to answer any other questions you may have, and on this occasion, I would wish you to consider the comments that I have made and not accept the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any points of clarification? No? Claire, anything to come back on at the moment? In that case, my usual thing. Move the recommendation as printed, which is to refuse planning permission for the reasons as printed. Is that seconded? Any member? Councillor Smith.
This close very well. I live a couple of minutes away and I pass it daily when I'm exercising my dogs. You've heard both sides of the argument from our speakers. All I would say is, as you pull off the main road into the close, you can see the garage that was referred to by the supporters of this. But as you round the bend, it opens out into an extremely attractive close with 8 high-quality properties. And the green area, I think, was left there by the developer for the very purpose of visual amenity. It adds great value to the close. Hasn't been awfully well maintained by the developer, who still owns the land, as I understand. However, I think the fact that residents have taken the time to plant trees there says something about the value of it to the rest of the residents. And I think the officers have got this one exactly right on visual amenity. If any building were to go on that piece of land, it would be detrimental to the look of the whole close. So I'll be supporting the recommendation on this one.
Okay. Any other member? No? The recommendation to refuse planning permission has been moved and seconded. All those in favour of that? And against? And abstentions? That's refused. Which then takes us on to that last one there. Item number 4.8, Ribbonbrook.
Thank you. Apologies for the quality of the planned reproduction on the screen there. It didn't go as well as planned. This application is for the felling of a lime tree covered by a preservation order at number 8 Ribbonbrook in Nuneaton. The application is being reported to committee as there has been a letter of support for the felling of the tree, which is opposite to officer recommendation. This is not a planning application, but an application to carry out works to a protected tree, and as such, there are two matters that can be taken into account: the health of the tree and the impact on visual amenity. The tree in question is a lime tree, and the report submitted with the application indicates that it is an immature specimen, and although there is evidence of pollarding of the tree in the past, the report does not evidence any concerns for the health of the tree. It is therefore considered that there is no justification for the removal of the tree on its health. The report submitted with the application contends that the tree does not add to the visual amenities of the area, in that it is set close to a denser area of trees on the embankment to the rear of the properties, which is on the railway line. It argues that the tree is not distinguishable from the trees on the embankment, and therefore the loss of the tree is not detrimental to the visual amenities of the area. The tree preservation order that protects the tree also covers other lime trees in the back gardens of properties in this row. The council's parks and amenities team have been consulted and object to the loss of the tree. They consider that the tree is in good health, that the tree has good amenity value and in the area. The row of trees that are protected can be seen above the roofs of houses, and they make a contribution in this regard. It is considered that the loss of this tree would set an unacceptable precedent for the removal of other protected trees, which cumulatively would lead to a detrimental impact on the visual amenities of the area. In addition, the trees on the railway embankment are not protected, so they could be removed without any applications to the council. The recommendation is therefore one of approval for the reasons as set out on your agenda. Thank you. Sorry. Refusal, not written refusal.
It's what's printed on the paper. Simon Rotherham. No? In that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation, which is to refuse the works to the tree for the reasons as printed? Is that seconded? Any member? Councillor Longden.
Comments on trees. This time, I actually disagree with the recommendation. As I always have, trees are very personal if they're in people's gardens. It's down to them, really, whether they want to keep it or not down to us. If there is some amenity in a tree, then we should give people the option of doing what this person wants to do, fell it, and providing they replace it with two others somewhere else in an appropriate position. And I don't think that's unreasonable in the circumstances. Lime trees are notoriously bad, we've got some on our patch, and they're absolutely right in that when they say that the drop-ins are slippery and sticky and horrible. Get them on your car, they're awful to get off. So I do have a certain amount of sympathy with what they want to do, and I find it very significant that there's been no neighbour objections to what this person wants to do, and in fact there's one letter supporting it. I find that very significant. If people were that worried, they would have objected. They haven't, and in fact there's been a letter of support. So for me, this is wrong. This person should be allowed to do what they want to do with the growth on their property, and if we need to support the idea of retaining trees or visual amenities, we should at least give them an option to replace.
Wilson.
You can read into responses what you want to, actually, the absence either for or against. It could be that residents have seen the recommendation in the report that we have before us and thought, actually, the committee have got it right, I don't need to attend tonight. We don't know. You can read into into responses what you will, unless it's actually printed in front of you. Now, to me, the neighbour responses seem to be a statement of the obvious. Dead branches often fall off. That's obvious. Sheds a lot of leaves in the autumn. Well, trees tend to do that unless they're things like conifers. This is a development which was subsequent to the development of the main area surrounding it in Borough, and those trees were there long before this development. Those people who have bought houses in this area have done so in the knowledge those trees are there. They've been there for many, many years, and presumably in the knowledge that they are subject to a tree preservation order. If they weren't, then they should speak to their agents who actually conveyed the property and didn't tell them that. That's an issue about not being made aware by those who you pay to advise you. But I think this isn't like the ones on Hyde's pastures where they're conifers and don't really have any amenity value. I think these do offer an amenity value to the area. I drive past them quite often. Indeed, I'll be driving past them on my way home tonight. And although they are subtle, they're in the background, I think if you started to knock them down and fell them, because once you get one application, as we've seen in other areas, other people soon come up with applications to get rid of them. I think it depends on the type of tree and where the properties are and what the trees do. And I think in this case, they do add some amenity to the area, and the other residents and the future residents of the area, not just of the immediate road, but of the community, should be afforded that value. Otherwise, the committee, I presume, would not, when it granted planning permission for the Ribbon Fields and Ribbon Brooks areas, have put tree preservation orders on them in the past. So I think this is one instance where the officers have got tree preservation orders right. It's not a conifer, it is something which adds value to the area.
Thank you.
Confused by the attitude of some of my colleagues. I think a tree, any tree, is probably far more important than any car. I can just imagine somewhere in other parts of the world, there's similar committees having these sort of discussions tonight, and millions of trees, thousands of acres of trees are going to be wiped out in the near future, not realising how important trees are to our existence. So especially I think if I was living in a house so close to a diesel railway line, I would like a barrier to pollution between me and that diesel railway line, because diesel trains especially, are a lot worse than cars. Now, I've got nothing against trains or cars in theory, but when it comes to a toss-up between a tree or a car, I'm going to go for the tree every time. You know, I would give my car up for the sake of trees. I think that that's important to our existence. We need trees, and again, it's just another tree. But if we add it to the two that we've already gone, and the other hundreds that have already gone, we're losing an awful lot of trees. We're losing an awful lot of our environment that's important to our existence. So I'm definitely in favour with the officers here. We should look after trees, especially those with tree preservation orders, whether they're worthy of a tree preservation order or not. I think trees are important. Thank you.
Anything to come back on? It's been moved and seconded, the recommendation, which is to refuse the tree works for the reasons printed. All those in favour of that? And against? I think that's it. Okay, so we don't have any urgent items. Can I thank you very much for your attendance? And just before I close the meeting, give you prior notice that, depending on how many applications we have at the next meeting, it's my intention for us to do a short training session. So if we haven't got any pink papers, there will still be a 4 o'clock attendance for training, please. Just bear that in mind, put it in your diaries. Thank you. And declare the meeting closed.